Happy Devil's Wednesday. Yeah, this is State of the Fan Address, episode 271, with an elongated intro bumper, as I'll explain a little bit later. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, paying the $22 a month to stream on X Live and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Nick Villano of pucksandpitchforks.com, the editor-in-chief extraordinaire, coming to you from his primetime radio studios in the South Jersey bunker, and obviously in the North Jersey bunker. But, Nick, do you ever get this thing where, I just drank some ginger ale, and I want to burp, but it's just sitting there. And during the intro, the bumper, I'm like, all right, just burp, and then I go on air. Can't do it. Now I have this like uncomfortable feeling right here in my esophagus and stomach, like I'm about to belch, but it's just not coming out. So hopefully, the trigger on the cough button will help in this situation.
Honestly, because part of my shtick is I have a beer with the podcast, and here's the interesting thing. It's not interesting. It's really I don't know why I said interesting. It's not interesting at all. But I don't drink during the week until the podcast starts, and then I'll have my first beer of the week, and then so I let all that pent up stress kind of come out with a beer and a podcast talking about hockey, where things don't truly impact my life one way or another. But so many times when I'm drinking that beer, you get into a rant and then it starts to bubble, and I don't know if it's because I'm so animated and I'm shaking things up, but I always tend to belch in the middle of these big rants. So I feel you, Sam. There's nothing you can do about it.
I think I'm going to belch. I'm going to ask the YouTube livers, should I belch on air?
I don't know. What kind of belcher are you? Are you a Homer Simpson or a Barney Gumble belcher?
I am a booger belcher.
What is that from?
Revenge of the Nerds?
Oh, I've seen that a bunch of times, but I haven't watched it in probably a good 15 years.
There's Ogre, remember? And then Booger had a mentor in the Revenge of the Nerds Part 2.
Right. Yeah. I've definitely seen those two. Was there a third?
There was, but I don't think it's
like
so
one of those
bad.
It's like National Lampoon Van Wilder level straight to DVD nonsense.
Yeah, funny story. I used to like Boston cream pie donuts from Dunkin'
Oh yeah, those
Donuts.
are still my favorite.
But ever since Van Wilder, I can't even eat it. I cannot, especially when they're warm. Can't do it. Just can't do it. I just can't. I know we're talking random stuff, but I like to talk random stuff. It's kind of when I go to Montreal, or back in the day when I did a lot of, we had a lot of, for my old XM shows, we had a lot of Canadian-based sponsor the show. Mm-hmm. And part of the deal is, part of the business is to, network, but also chit-chat.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, and I think I've told this story before on live air, that for the longest time, anytime I, talk to people in Montreal, it's actually a different world out there. And finally, there were times where you're a communications specialist, Nick, is what you told me off air, that, the Montreal Canadiens, we talk about sponsorships, numbers, dollars and cents and all that kind of stuff. And things weren't working out. And then finally somebody who was smart pulled me aside and said, Sam, I don't know if you realize this, no offense, but you're talking like a brash New Yorker. I was like, what do you mean? Am I being like mean, or what are you talking about? Sam, it's French Canadian. When you call somebody up, you got to make small talk for 10 to 15 minutes on the phone before you actually get to the point. You're so like boom within the first 30 seconds direct that you take people off guard. You got to ask how their holiday was, or you got to ask about this, or how's the weather up there, how's your job.
Wait, this
going?
was when you were a producer?
Executive producer, yeah, when you're talking to sponsors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Why? You don't believe me? That's what they told me.
No. I definitely believe you. I'm just thinking, like, usually, like, the producer, like, you expect to get to the point. You know what I mean? But
well, yeah, but we're brash New Yorkers apparently.
Right.
The Northeast,
Apparently.
right? And also the other thing too is you got to manage your ego. Manage your ego, especially in Canada when it comes to hockey, because they already automatically think you are, I don't know, what's that word? Not a delinquent, inferior. I don't know what's the proper word. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Why don't we just get to the point?
All right. Do you know what? I actually had a boss of mine a couple of days ago say we were just talking about somebody else, and this person being docile. And she's like, well, you don't want to change how this person is. You still want to let this person be who they are. Like, you wouldn't want somebody to tell you to not be aggressive. And that was the moment I was like, oh, people think I'm aggressive here. It's like, I don't know if that's good. But I just think that's New Jersey, right? New Jersey is just – I just think that's – as somebody who's from New Jersey, like, obviously I don't think it's a bad thing. But I just think we kind of – there's time for chit-chat. There's time for consternation. But I'd rather just talk. And I'd rather just get to the point. And speaking of the point, we got solemn news today, Sam.
I heard over the wire from you before the podcast. Tell me more, because the title is Devil's Coverage Changes.
Yeah, I still liked mine better, but it's fine.
I know, but I'll talk to you off air about your.
It's fine. It's fine. Ryan Novosinski of NJ.com, Star Ledger, will no longer be covering the New Jersey Devils after probably like the first quarter of the season, maybe less. First part of the season, he said. Don't worry. He's sticking to the Star Ledger, NJ.com. He's going to be covering the New York Giants. Ryan was a great friend of our podcast. Came on multiple times. Came on for the Stadium Series show. Was on live with us. Was on video and call, and great friend of the podcast. Gave us a lot of time. We appreciate his expertise here on the podcast. But don't worry, we're not going to go back to the doldrum days where we don't have a beat writer. They've given the role to Gabriel Trevino. I don't know much about Gabriel, but I'm excited to talk to him. He's done a lot of things. I believe he's a Oklahoma State alum, like Novosinski was. And it looks like he's just doing a little bit of everything. He's covering training camp for the Giants and he's putting in work. And again, Novosinski came to the Devils at a time when it was us, Pucks and Pitchforks, and the Let's Go Devils podcast. It was all about the jersey. It was the hockey writers, and it was Amanda Stein. And the in-house reporters, Chris Wassel and I believe Sam was not there yet, but was Catherine there at that point when we had no beat writers?
I believe so.
Yeah, so I think Catherine was there. So you had the in-house guys, and then you had the blogs, and there was no true beat reporters. We had a beat reporter, and there was guys who went. But there just wasn't a lot happening. So the Ryan Novozinski came along, and first of all, and he told the story on the podcast about how he wasn't originally given the Devils beat. He was allowed to talk about the Devils, right? He was kind of like, it was like part of his gig, but he was talking about gambling. He was talking about, like, he was a day of guy. He was talking about just about everything. But his Devils content was bringing him subscriptions, and it was making the newspaper money. So his Devils articles. You threw me off. I'm blaming you for this one because I just watched your camera adjust and my brain broke. I watched you zoom in on yourself.
Blame the victim. Okay,
you're right. You're right. I'm gonna pull what a lot of guys. No, I'm just kidding. I did just watch you do that, and my brain was like, "Why did that just happen?"
Yeah, that makes great content that he zoomed in on himself.
Sorry. He wrote the Devils articles were bringing in subscriptions, and people, and he turned into a full-time Devils reporter. And again, I've spoken to Ryan a lot. He's been a great resource. I've tried to be a good resource for him just because, you could bounce things off each other. But I truly feel like we're losing a good writer. That stinks. I'm excited to see what Gabriel has to offer. He's young, he's spry. Give the Buck a chance to thrive. I'm going back and forth because a lot of these guys are friends of the podcast, but I'm just gonna come out and say it, Sam. What is your thoughts on the status of the beat?
Wow.
And I don't want this to come off the wrong way because I truly love the guys who write about the Devils. I read about the Devils every single day, and I write about them most days. But something seemed to change last year, right? The beat seemed to turn. I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, yeah, because John Sumner says first Erica and now Ryan.
Right.
Look. I'll be funny about it first and not serious, and I'll give you my serious answer. Hey, the team sucked last year, so everybody's off the bandwagon. Not really.
Yeah.
Look, media as a whole, notice I didn't use the C word. Media as a whole is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. It's changing so fast where one medium, like back in the day, Facebook is now all this. And I've always said when we stream on multiple platforms that we're bar hopping. We're social media bar hopping. We're going to X, even though Sam has to pay $22 a month for it now. And, Facebook Live and YouTube Live and all these media. There's so many because we don't want to alienate anybody. That's why we do it. Same thing is happening about this coverage, right? So, and it's constantly changing. It used to be Rich Scher and Tom Gallitti. It was easy, reliable, and I wish we can go back to old journalism days, but it's evolved. Journalism is still there. It's just different than it was 20 years ago. Because of technology, because of distribution, all that stuff. But to answer your question, that I think a lot of it is there's always going to be nowadays high turnover because that's the job market right now where, look, you do a couple years here and you move yourself up, you get more bucks elsewhere. I can assure you that I would not give up this gig that we have here, this platform, the Let's Go Devils podcast, to do the New York Football Giants or whatever. But I think that's what the Devils as a whole needs. Their organization is consistent coverage from the same people. It's just not going to happen anymore. So that's why Amanda Stein's there, at least from a team standpoint.
And I truly don't understand it, because I'm trying not to like speak about myself, but
no, go right ahead.
I mean, Pucks and Pitchforks coverage shows what happens when you have a consistent coverage loop.
Yep.
Like when I got this medium, I was doing 20,000 views a month. We're up to 400. Even last month, when nothing happened, we did 300. Nobody was talking about anything. Everybody was complaining about how there was nothing to talk about. People were reaching, and but we just have so much stuff in the can that we easily hit those numbers, and anybody should be able to do this. And I do feel like it something weird happened last year. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because things were contentious with Lindy. I don't know if I'll be honest. Last year was grueling to cover this team. Like, it was just not fun. You had to figure out whether you wanted to talk about firing a coach, because that's all anybody was talking about. That's all the fan base wanted, our opinions on firing the coach. They were sellers again. You were constantly reacting to rumors that like never went anywhere. Everybody was like leaking information that wasn't true, so you had to really, really, really like question the sources of your information, and you had to not trust anybody because that they were using the media. And then on top of all that, there was the Michael McLeod Cal Foot situation, which is very important to talk about and be freely open about. Like, when it comes to the information that's coming in, and being truthful and and trying your best to be fair to all sides while not being judge, jury, and executioner, but understanding so much that goes on with sexual assault coverage. How much I worked to try to get the right people on this podcast to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I came away very impressed with your effort.
Well, thank you.
I'm not saying that to blow smoke, because I can't reveal details because I don't want to, and I shouldn't. But it was pretty, like, I'm like, okay, this is real journalism here. I'll just shut up and let Nick do his work.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But then there's there's things not as like that just happened, but like what happened. So like we had to talk about injuries, and the Devils never reveal what was going on with the injuries. So you're writing about something you don't know about, which is frustrating. And like, I get it from the Devils' point of view. Like, truly why they're being secretive about the injuries. You want to keep a competitive advantage. But my point is that I've felt some, and I do not want to speak for Ryan. I do not think this is why he's going where he's going. He's got a great opportunity to cover the Giants, and that looks like a very good promotion. I'm very happy for him. But this beat sucked last year. Like, just to cover this team, it sucked. The team was bad. Everybody was injured. There was awful storylines off the ice. It was just a calamity. And when all of this happens, when your team is losing, I have news for you, Sam. Not as many people read. So you have to work harder to get people to read. And, you have to but you also have to keep your ethics. So you don't want to just do clickbait. You don't want to be like, oh, this Devils player is getting traded today. But you also want to be strategic with your headlines by not revealing too much, because that's what people click on to. Like, Sam, do you know what one of my most clicked articles of last year is?
What's that?
The Curtis McDermott trade. Just because I didn't say his name in the headline. And honestly, honest to gosh, I kind of feel dirty about it. Just because I don't know. I'd rather just be straightforward with our fans and tell them what I'm talking about. and let my just the writing speak for itself. But we live in a different world, and you had to do what you had to do. You had to be strategic with your articles and what you're putting out there and the podcasts and all that. So truthfully, from the conversations I've had, there's a lot of it was just heavy. It was hard. And like, boo-hoo, we talk about sports. Like, it's really not that serious. But when you have opportunities elsewhere, I don't blame people for taking them, is my point. And I know that's not what happened with Erica. I know that's a different situation. The Erica situation is just dumb. Like, I'm just be honest. Like, if that loses us an interview with MSG one day, I'm sorry. You made a dumb decision. Like, Erica was fantastic at her job. I don't know the ins and outs of the contract negotiation, but it's dumb to let her go. Like, you don't there's so many people who are like, well, talent doesn't matter. I'm like, it absolutely does. Talent matters. Like, truthfully. Like, even in sports, talent brings people back, and they're making money hand over fists on these contracts anyway. So, well, I mean, maybe not MSG because they still don't have a contract with Comcast, but who am I to say?
Yeah, I mean, I almost wanted to put out on my Twitter account that I just hate corporate America. I hate everything.
Well, don't do that. Don't cost yourself a job one day.
Yeah, I know. But look, if I was a reporter, I go where the bucks are. I go where the action's at. The New York Football Giants, they got a couple scrums during their practices and, with the Detroit Lions. There's the Giants. They play once a week, but somehow they have a lot of it. It's a bigger beat. It really is. The Devils beat.
But it also makes sense. There's 53 players on the roster, so you have a lot more to talk about. Like, you go in different directions with coverage. The storyline, it's just there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more people who work for the team, so a lot more information comes out. I do think football deserves a lot of the coverage that it gets. I will say that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it does. Major League Baseball will keep you active for 162 days a year. However, if you're a New York Mets reporter for some of those lean years, it could be a very long season, which stinks, especially in a market that is the New York City metro area.
It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's a grind, and the competition's sharp, and you got to and you got to be on your A game at all times. But one of the things about the Let's Go Devils podcast is and pucksandpitchforks.com is the actual longevity and consistency since 2017 that we're still doing this. And again, it started out as a labor of love. It's still a labor of love. Again, Nick and I have day jobs, just like a lot of people, but somehow we find ourselves on a Wednesday in the middle of August talking about Devils hockey and the coverage. And I think a lot of lessons were learned. We've said this before during the heart of the pandemic I remember that time. I'll never forget when you and I were like nervously talking. I don't know if it was on the phone or through the studio line that what are we going to do if hockey is shut down for like a year? What do you do? Everything you've built was, and then we got creative, like how to cut your hair during a pandemic. We remember Real New Jersey, the first episode with Shorts Guy and I. We talked about Action Park, and
yep.
I loved Action Park. You went there to get hurt and then tell your parents about it. It was great, and they sent you there anyway.
The 90s were a weird time, man. Like, it was just like a lot of the guys who work for me at Pucks and Pitchforks are young. and like you were born in the 2000s. I don't know how to explain the world to them. Like, I feel so old. I'm not that old. I'm 35, but I feel like I'm 100 because I'm like, I mean, like they grew up only knowing cell phones and social media and this constantly. I don't want to call it surveillance. It's such a dirty word, but like parents always knowing where you are, and for the most part, I think that's a good thing. For the record, I think it's good that your parents know where you are, but it's just a different world that I like. Just disappeared for hours on end, and we had to go find a payphone to go get picked up, and like that payphone could be anywhere. And like I don't know about your parents, my parents didn't ask a lot of questions. They asked like how your day was and like what'd you do, but they didn't ask like how'd you end up at a gas station on Route 37. They just came and picked you up, or you walked home. You know, if you were close enough. It's just but that was that's to say like Action Park was kind of that same thing. Be like, what happens at Action Park? They didn't ask. There also wasn't the internet to look up what the heck was happening at Action Park. Unless something happened at Action Park and they happened to watch the 6 o'clock news while they were doing the story on it.
Oh, the Daily Record.
They think it's an amusement park.
I think the Daily Record, the small town Morris County had like, 2 major accidents, whatever. Let me tell you, that Alpine slide at Action Park, I flew out of one because they told you you're supposed to use brakes, but it's like, who's going to use brakes? We're going to have a great time. Didn't care. And then I flipped out.
Yeah, 12 to 16-year-olds going down. Yeah.
Of course.
The Action Park documentary was one of the best pieces of the best pieces of
documentary.
I know, but I'm trying. Like, I thought it was like one of the best of like pieces of entertainment that came out during the pandemic. Like if you haven't seen the Action Park documentary, highly recommend it. It's on Max still. I think it's still on Max. It should be.
Actually, to tell you the truth, when Shorts Guy and I did that podcast, you can look it up on YouTube. I think it was before that came out. We didn't know that it was coming out, so it was kind of wild.
Probably.
It was kind of wild that we were talking about it. Like the Cannonball. Was it the Cannonball? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, the Cannonball, and there was one. I don't know if it was the Cannonball, but there was one where you go down and it's a loop, and then you boom.
That's not the Cannonball, but that was probably the scariest ride you've ever seen in your life. Yeah. Like a loop to loop with no seatbelt.
Oh yeah, I mean, I went. I mean, let me tell you, you had to be a good swimmer in some of these water rides in Action Park. There was like absolutely no rules. It was the best. It was just. Anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic here, but
it's okay.
but money talks, and you know what? Because it's somewhat of a small market team, but it isn't. Covering the team, is it lucrative?
No, I mean, what do you mean? Like,
well, I mean, geez, if you're covering if you're covering like the Mets, Yankees. And you're with a major publication, New York Post or Daily News. Is Daily News still around? I don't know. But, if you're or NJ.com or any, any of those, conglomerates, you're going to at least make a living. It may not be like the best living, but at least you're going to make a living. But at the same time, there's a lot of competition. I mean, do you consider us a competition or pucksandpitchforks.com? Even though it's maybe in a different niche market, I don't know, but
because of what we're looking at, I do consider us competition. I don't consider us like I'm very clear that when I talk about myself as a journalist, I mean in my previous career.
Yep.
I don't mean now. And I do consider what Novosinski was doing. He was a journalist, right? But the line between blogger and journalist is flawed, or it's very gray. especially for this beat. Like in New York on the Yankees, like the fan side is Yankees Go Yard. They do a great job. Talk about the Yankees, but I don't think anybody's like foregoing reading Mark Feinstein or any of the great New York Yankees writers to read Yankees Go Yard. I think it's it's a compliment to coverage. Here, there's certain cases where I guess what I'm trying to say, if somebody's going to pick one, I think they're going to pick the journalist if it's not behind a paywall or whatever. With the Devils, if you're going to pick one, you're just going to go to your favorite. Sometimes Bucks and Pitchforks is the favorite. Sometimes All About the Jersey is the favorite. Sometimes Novo is the favorite. And I think many more people consider Novo their favorite over Pucks and Pitchforks or All About the Jersey or all those. But I still think there are people who I know for a fact that people bookmark our website, and I assume there's just as many people bookmarking All About the Jersey. And I assume a lot of those people are bookmarking NG.com Devils coverage because they want to. And Christy with the hockey news, I think they're bookmarking her. Like I think that truly, I do think people have their favorites. Then I go on Reddit like once in a blue moon just to kind of see what the status of the fan base is and just kind of the feeling.
They all hate
fan base.
me. They all hate me.
There's just hate. Hate is always louder than love. Like it just is. And there's a lot of hate for me on Reddit as well. That's fine. I love y'all. I love all Devils fans. I could care less. I don't block anybody. I mute people just for my own health because I just don't need it. But I will say I one thing I did stop doing just because like one thing I stopped doing is I stopped adding people on Facebook. Unless like I legitimately know you. But I had a lot of friend requests I have dozens of friend requests on Facebook that I just am ignoring because I don't. Twitter is one thing where it's just kind of like a feed, just move along. But like Facebook, it's just so personal, and I'm like, and I don't even post, but I don't need to know. Like people sharing politics, people sharing beliefs, it's just a lot. It is a lot. I just so I did stop adding people on Facebook just because it was just too much. Unless listen, if you come out and we have 30-minute conversation at one of the live podcasts, and you're like, oh, can we be friends on Facebook? I just want to follow the podcast. Absolutely. But if I've never heard of you or just know you from the comment section, I don't know. And I feel like a lot of the people who do this coverage have had to make those, had to draw that line of demarcation, just because it's a weird world. People are putting too much on social media. Nobody needs people are treating their Facebook page like bumper stickers on a car. You know what I mean? Truly, I don't care what you think.
I want to know something.
And I'm not even saying that just about our fans. Sorry. I think that about everybody posting on Facebook. Facebook is a cesspool right now. But anyway. I
noticed. Remember back in the 80s, there were radio wars, like Z100 and Power 95 would, go at it, But they were all really on the same team, but not really.
Right. Yeah, it was manufactured.
It's all manufactured and all that. But what I will tell you that's not manufactured, and it's weird, this podcast is pretty popular. Mm-hmm. There's other podcasts that I would say pretty popular. But sometimes it's weird where you get caught with Devils fans that if you're a listener of this podcast, it's like you can't be a listener of the Let's Go Devils podcast. It's weird. It's weird. And it's I believe everybody has different tastes and all that kind of stuff. Thank you, Mr. Bastard, for saying I think Sam is great and he loves the show. Not everybody has taste.
I think Sam is great too.
Yeah, thank you. I need all the compliments. I've been thrown under the bus like Nick for the past week, but and and I think part of the success, or one of the main reasons for the success of this podcast, is that we never try to alienate anybody. So if you like a certain Devil's podcast, we're okay with that. But it's weird because some of these fans of these other podcasts would say really rotten things to me when we're at American Whiskey or something like that, or blah 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 blah. I hate your podcast, and it's like, okay, you didn't really have to tell me, but okay.
I've had some heinous things said to me.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm the only one. I just
this wasn't yet. Sorry.
Yeah, I just don't see the logic in any of it. If you don't like it, then just don't read it or don't listen. But why do you have to go out and say you suck or whatever? And it's like,
because people feel it is the same reason why people feel like they have. We've done like news stories on this about why people are more bold on social media than they are in like real life, and it's the same reason why people feel that somebody they see on TV or they listen to in a podcast or they read on the internet, whether that's small like us or like celebrities, it's because they know that we can't respond, right? It's like we can't be the podcast host that punches people in the face. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with like the internet. Like, you're not going to face any consequences. Say what you want, and it makes you feel better about yourself and whatever. Like if you're coming into my DMs, calling me an idiot makes you feel better about your life.
Well,
okay.
John Sumner said it best. I listen to multiple Devil's podcasts, but yours is top for me. And my response, and thank you, John, for the compliment.
Thank you, John.
But that's good because you're engaged with the Devil's fandom. I've always liked different points of view. Even if I don't like it. Like, this is part of this podcast that we have here. A lot of it is Nick and I don't script our feelings. Most of the times we disagree. Would you agree with that? That we disagree?
I would say most. I say there's a couple big things we disagreed on.
Yeah.
I think you're very. This is the Jersey in you. I think you come up with a thought, and that's your thought, and then you will die. Like, it's like almost like you made a bet. You're like, I'm never cashing out. I'm gonna ride this bet, like Lindy Ruff, right? I had changed my mind on Lindy Ruff 7 or 8 times. And you stuck to your guns on Lindy Ruff.
I'm still sticking to it because out in Europe, he might kick our asses the first 2 games. You never know.
No, yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. The situation is not great as far as scheduling for the Devils. Let's pivot. Let's talk about Devils real quick. We got about 10 minutes left. If that even. But let's. I'm seeing. First of all, I do want to mention the Athletic came out with the GM rankings, and it's kind of like a happiness quotient or a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, kind of the vibes around them, and they take like the hockey world vibes, and then they take the fan base vibes, and to no one's surprise, the hockey vibes and the fan base vibes were almost contradictory for Tom Fitzgerald. The hockey world thinks he's a borderline genius. Thinks he's great at development, thinks he's great at drafting, thinks he's great at roster management, at trades, at signings, at personnel decisions. And the fan base To be fair, the fan base gave some like C pluses, B minuses, and Bs, and most of those things, while the outside hockey world gave them As. But fan base, I think they give him a C minus in development. The thought is that the Alexander Holtz fiasco is kind of really made him look bad to the fan base. There are others, and you can read them at pucksandpitchforks.com, where I wrote about 5 prospects who were still failed. That's on pucksandpitchforks.com right now. But it just talks about the developmental failures. Alexander Holtz is not on the list, truly because I wanted to talk about guys that I'd lost faith in as a hockey player. Like, I don't think they're going to turn into anything ever. Some have no chance. Others, still have somewhat of a chance. Did you know Ty Smith's only 24?
Wow.
I was like, you got to be 27 by now.
It seems like he seems like he's been in the league for almost 10 years now.
Right. Yeah, like that rookie season where he was like a phenomenon, feels so long ago. But
yeah,
it was only 4 years ago. So but he's on the list. I've given up on Ty Smith. I think he forgot how to play hockey. But I could see why. Because what are the developmental successes of Tom Fitzgerald? Like draft to development successes. And I'm going here. It's not entirely fair. Mercer's a good one. It's not entirely fair because he took over the team for the 2020 draft. Like, that was his first draft. So, like, I'm looking for, like, the Jesper Bratz. Like, after the 3rd round, who turned into an NHL player.
Cam Squires.
And, like, all of those guys. Who?
Cam Squires. Is that his last name?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a good one. Arseny Gritzik, I actually think was a Ray Shero pick.
Whatever happened to that one pick? What was his name? 6th round. Josh Philman? Is that the one?
Oh, so he went to the AHL, but they sent him to juniors last year, and he was fine. He was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think he'll be in the AHL this year.
Okay.
He's
forgot
still
about him.
On track. He's on track.
Yep.
But he just didn't take the headlines last year like he did the year before, just because I think he had like a repeat season, which can be bad. I mean, but like this happens all the time. Like Tyler Brennan was like, "Oh, this is our goalie of the future" when he was killing it in juniors, and he was in the ECHL last year, and he'll be in the ECHL again this year. So, we have to remember with these prospects and doing the research on guys like Alexander Urbaum, who is also on the list, and just like Lou Lamoriello called him our best prospect when we had John Merrill and Damon Severson and Eric Jelena and a couple. Oh gosh, like going down the path of some of these guys, I was reminded of names that I forgot existed. Like, remember Baddock? We thought he was going to be the bee's knees. It turned into nothing much. There was a bunch of guys, Josh Jacobs, Steve Santini. I'm not even going back that far for some of these. We just had these high hopes, especially for defensemen. It's just such a crapshoot. But anyway, it was just interesting to see. Are you surprised that there's such a difference between the thought within the NHL and the thought of the fan base for Tom Fitzgerald?
What was the question? I wasn't understanding what a thought about.
So the fan base thinks that Tom Fitzgerald's mediocre, above average, like kind of in that realm, and the NHL thinks he's like a phenomenal GM.
Well,
are you surprised by that?
Not really, because the Devils fan base.
I'm not surprised.
The fan base demands a Stanley Cup before they rate you as a great GM, just because.
That's fair.
2 predecessors ago, Lou Lamoriello really set the bar very high. Now, in terms of the NHL media, are you talking about NHL media? That's the other side?
I can't remember if it was NHL front office, like anonymous survey from the front office, or if it was NHL media. I can't remember truly. It was on the Athletic. Don Lashinsky, Lushizin, wrote it.
Well, either or, again, you know how I feel about NHL media, whatever, and even like the Hockey Hall of Fame and all that. And we need Stan Fischler in the Hockey Hall of Fame. That I just like the voting for the Conn Smythe. Are these reporters so like insecure that if they don't vote for Connor McDavid, they'll never get an interview with him?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan.
It was so one-sided.
I wasn't a fan. Do you know who was very upset with me about my opinions on that? It was Ardo Acal, friend of the podcast.
Really?
Did not love that he was
Really?
very for the Connor McDavid thing, and I was he was for the Connor McDavid thing after Game 5. I was like, I can't do it, man. Like we can't be doing this.
You know what? We like Arda, obviously. Different
Love
opinions. Arda. This is what this podcast is about. Different opinions. So we're not trashing Arda like, oh, he sucks. No.
Oh no, Arda's this was clearly the opinion of many because he won.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm just like, do you think sometimes like when you're in the media room or all that everybody's drinking the same Kool-Aid?
That might be it. It might honestly we are a fickle species. And opinions can be manipulated pretty easily for a lot of our species, or a lot of mankind. Last thing I'll bring up on the podcast today. I'm trying to think of the words here. I'm looking at how everybody's looking at our situation, and especially the Jacob Markstrom of it all. And I keep going back and forth. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, they figured it out. Like Jacob Markstrom was really good last year. Was really good the year before. He was really good last year. Bad the year before. Really good the year before that. I have two thoughts on this. A, I think Jacob Markstrom was the right guy to get. It gives them 2 years to kind of... The market was psychotic. It was psychotic. It was just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Getting Jacob Markstrom gives them an opportunity to do two things. One is let Nico Dawes see if he could develop and turn into something, as well as Tyler Brennan and Jacob Malik and all the other ones, but mostly Dawes. I think Dawes is the guy. It also, and I feel bad doing this to you, Sam, at the end of the podcast, but there's the smallest chance. There's no franchise tag in the NHL. If Shesterkin becomes a free agent next year, give him $12 million. Give him $12 million to come. You don't even have to move out of your house. You have just as much of a chance to win a Stanley Cup. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Do I think that if they could have got Yusei Saros, but they didn't because of this thing, that would be a mistake. What I think happened is the Devils looked at the entire landscape of the makeup of their team. They understand the cap is going up. So money moves don't hurt as much if you're not in a certain echelon. And that's kind of where they are with Markstrom. They'd be in a different echelon if they got Hellebuck or Saros. But even they would have gotten to that echelon as far as money goes if the trade prices weren't cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy. And I truly think even the Linus Allmark trade ask was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy. What happens where the Devils left they left the arena, and everyone else they no longer had leverage, which is why Linus Ullmark got such a terrible return. But back to the point, getting Jacob Markstrom means that you still have this opportunity if one of these super duper duper star goalies become available. If Dallas decides they're going to be cheap with Jake Ottinger, if New York just doesn't get a deal done with Starkin, and I think Sorokin, he's got a pretty good contract there in New York, so I don't think he's ever going to become available. But lose fickle and crazy sometimes. So it gives you this opportunity that if the super duper star ever becomes available for the right price, I'm not saying like cheap, but the right price, you have the flexibility to make that happen.
That's an interesting point of view that we didn't really hit on enough when Markstrom was traded for, and same with Jake Allen. Here's something interesting, food for thought. If the Devils could ever poach Shesterkin out of New York, let's say, for sake of argument, $12 million minimum to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's just use $12 million.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Allen will be off the books.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was he making? $3.2 million?
Less than that because Montreal is covering a bit of it. I think he's around 2.
Is that his cap number for the Devils?
I'll double check. You keep going on your point. I'll find it.
All right. And then you have Markstrom, who Calgary is. Didn't they retain 50% of his $6-something million a year contract?
A little less than. He's making around 4.
Around 4?
Like 4.1.
Okay. 4.1.
Allen is at 1.93. Markstrom is at 4.13 as far as cap hit.
All right, for 4.13 and was so basically a little bit over $6 million at cap space, right? Say if, in this instance, and Shesterkin is going to be a free agent, unrestricted next year, right? Anyway, so you would have to. I was asking you a question. So,
sorry, I thought that came off like a statement. Say it one more time.
Shesterkin is going to be a
free agent, unrestricted next offseason, 1 year from now.
So, if you can figure a way how to get rid of Markstrom, you can bury him in the eggshell. No, I'm just kidding. But figure a way. You clear out the goalies. You got $6.2 million. So you're halfway there. You would have to bring up Nico Dawes and trust him to be your backup. And then
Which I think he can be.
And then you're going to have to find $6 million elsewhere in that roster to either trade, do something. Plus, are there expiring contracts on the books for next season?
There's Tatar. Do you know what comes off the books next season? The Ilya Kovalchuk penalty. So there's $250,000.
Yeah, there you go.
There's $250,000 after 15 years.
But you're going to have to pay Luke Hughes. You're going to have to pay Simon Nevitz eventually. So
that's the year after. But you got listen. There's dinks and dunks coming off like Max Wellman, Curtis Lazar, Nathan Bastian, Thomas Tatar, Jonathan Kovacevic. Mm-hmm. So it's not a ton of money coming off the books, but you don't really need to add a lot.
And what if the cap increases?
Which it will.
Yeah.
Barring something crazy. Right? Barring I'm trying to see
COVID
crazy. That level of crazy. So say you lock in Dawson Mercer through next year at like, what do they have left? Yeah, you could sign Nolan Foote and then still give Dawson Mercer $4 million. The good thing about it's not really good. I was going to say you don't have to worry about the bonuses and contracts like Dawson Mercer's and Luke Hughes once you sign them. Mm-hmm. Because those bonuses could hurt you in future years because those bonuses are tied to those entry-level contracts. But they should have around... Does it say on here? Does not. Let's see. That's 26, 27, 60, 70. Yeah, I mean, they'll have pretty much enough to sign Shesterkin. So you would have to make some moves. But, I mean, it takes like one trade, right? Like, you trade Palat, and you're fine. You move Dylan, you're fine. If you move Dylan, like, you're less fine, but you can still fill out the roster with another, I think they had $4 or $5 million to fill out the rest of the roster. And all you need is, a bottom line and a depth defenseman, So, but then there's the Luke Hughes contract, which complicates things. So, but here's my point, Sam, is that adding Shesterkin to this team it's the game changer. It's I'll figure it out. You sign Shesterkin on the dotted line, you figure it out. And I'm usually not that guy. It's like it has to make sense, but like all they had a first-round pick to trade Palat, if that's what it takes to sign Shesterkin. I don't hate Palat. I think Palat's a good player. He's overpaid, but I think he's a good player. But if he's the reason I can't get Shesterkin, then I'm going to get him out of my dressing room. Just and I'm just talking about his contract. If his contract is a detriment, you move. You got to do. I don't want to call them desperate things, but you make it work if you can get Shesterkin.
If you have a shot at it, but I'll tell you, if you make a move with Shesterkin, there's got to be a reason for it. It's because you're that close to the cup. But if you're not that close, don't make the move because that could be a $12 million a year liability. It's not a good risk.
But he's the superstar. Like he's not going to fall off.
He's getting old. He's on 26. The Still, these goalies break down a lot quicker.
I disagree.
All right.
I think he's that dude. I want to double check the age because I just want to make sure that I didn't just.
Somebody's nervous.
He's 28.
Yeah,
I knew it was a little off, but I don't care.
It'll be 29, and you're paying him those big bucks on the back nine of his career. Although he does have,
but I don't think it's the back nine. I think it's the middle nine.
The middle nine. What a great way
I start on hole. You don't start on hole 5. Play until hole 14. That's not a normal way to play golf.
I don't know, Nick. How about I got a cheaper alternative. How about develop the next Martin Brodeur in your farm system? We gave up John Marino for it.
They seem to think McHale is that guy, so we'll see.
Maybe Tretchik.
But I think it's time for us.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's time for us to go to the clubhouse, get a hot dog, maybe a beer. Let's wrap up hole 14.
All right.
I'll do plugs real quick. So
yeah,
you know
I
what,
was waiting for that,
Sam. Yep. I am going to write about the Shesterkin nonsense. I'm going to do it. Just kind of put my thoughts on paper about how the Jacob Markstrom deal can lead to a Hail Mary Jacob Markstrom trade But right now, if you don't want to wait for that one, there's two, I think, really fun articles on there. I talked about the one about the failures that are still baffling us today. But there's one where I took 5 stats from the 2023-24 season that are so bad that the Devils need to do everything in their power, and more specifically, Sheldon Keefe needs to do everything in his power to make sure they do not repeat that failure of a stat.
Okay.
One of them, I think you'll really like, because I could have gone with save percentage and just something super generic, but I wanted to be a little bit more specific with my goalies. The Devils had 3 of the 8 worst goalies in the league when it came to giving up rebounds. And none of them were Vitek Vanacek. So this is still a current problem. One of them was Schmid, but Noz was not good at it, and Jake Allen was not good at it. They both gave up way too many rebounds. So I think that's something that needs to be a focus. They were all bottom 10 in the league. All 3 of them were bottom 10 in the league. And Markstrom's like in the middle of the pack, so it's not like he's great at it. Devils can't be giving up rebounds like that. Gotta have rebound control. No more second chance opportunities. If you don't get on the first try, you failed.
Easier said than done, Nick.
Unfortunately, it's only my job to say it. I cannot do it.
Yeah.
I would give up 100 rebounds every game. I would give up rebounds on things that weren't shots.
All right. Well, all I have to plug is this podcast will be dropped at midnight. Let's Go But Devils podcast heading towards 1 million downloads. Yes, 1 million gajillion downloads. That's right, Nick. There you go.
I'm just going to do that every time you bring it up now.
Yeah. 1 million downloads sometime in the next season, hopefully, unless our listenership just drops like the stock market the other day. But yeah, I'm trying to find the button, Nick, to close the podcast.
Are we going to do a party?
Oh my goodness, it's going to be a big budget party.
Ooh.
A real big budget party. It is going to be one for the ages.
Listen, speaking of big budget, I saw a big budget situation coming to the pregame parties. So, really excited for those.
Wait, situation like the situation?
No, like
No, I'm kidding around.
I don't want to reveal. It's not mine to reveal. But you share with me the big budget item coming to the pregame party, and I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll
Steve
open
Engel,
up the door for
Steve
more.
Engel will be our guest.
Huh?
I'm
Okay.
just kidding.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve Engel. It cost us $10 million. Anyway.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. All right.
As long as he's sharing the profits.
Yep. Want to thank all those tuning in to Stay the Fan Address. Again, dropping the podcast at midnight. We'll see you next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, every Wednesdays. Till next time, let's go Devils.